Hey KU fans, welcome back to KU Sports Extra. We're back for another week of Season 3. We already made a huge deal out of Season 3 last week, so let's not even talk about Season 3. Okay, good. I blew it. Doggone it. Tom Keegan, Matt Tait, we're going to do our regular thing here. We're going to talk a little football, a lot of football actually.
Season 12 for me in football.
There you go. We're going to talk a little volleyball and a little basketball. It's things are really in full swing right now. But let's start with football. Unfortunately, it's a topic that's pretty hot right now, but for all the wrong reasons if you're the KU football program. They're 1-2. They just got trounced by Memphis. You were there. I was not. I wasn't too upset about that. I'm sure you were. So the general state of this program right now, you wrote a column about Shane Zenger being on the hot seat a little bit and being held accountable for this hire.
Right. Well, you have to, because 5 years is the magic number.
Right.
And this is the 5th year of a Shane Zenger hire.
Right.
And
good point.
And if they go 1-11, Shane Zenger's 5 years will be 8-52, and you can't blame that all on Turner Gill. Charlie Weiss was a worse hire than Turner Gill.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing has just been a snowball that has just continued to get bigger and get nastier and get dirtier. And
Shane Zenger takes great pride in letting the coaches coach.
Right.
But at the same time, he hired for $800,000 a year a first-time head coach.
Right. Needs some guidance.
Needs some guidance, and even if it's as simple and as general as this. When David Beatty comes to you, Shane Zenger, and says, I'm going to have Likens be the walk-around guy, I'm going to be the offensive coordinator.
Right.
That's when Shane needs to sit down and say, no.
No, you're not.
No, you're not. You're hiring Jason Phillips as wide receivers coach. Here's what I will let you do. You can either make Jason Phillips, who has some experience as an offensive coordinator, or Rob Likens, who was your offensive coordinator last year.
Of choice,
and was signed to a 3-year, $1.05 million guaranteed contract. Either one of those guys is your offensive coordinator. Both have experience at it. And the other one is the wide receivers coach. Both have experience at that. But you will not be taking over the offense. You will be coaching your coaches. Next question.
Yeah. We're too far away from that. It can't happen now. It could, I guess, but it'd just be another comedy of errors type of thing.
It could, and maybe it is. I don't know. It was so vague.
Yeah. Well, right. Either way, Beatty announced this week that he's going to pull back a little bit. He says he's done some things in the last couple of weeks that have cost him.
You know, I did something a little bit different here in the last couple of weeks that I think it cost us. I mean,
as much as you can pile on here, I will give the guy credit for saying that and admitting that. It takes a pretty big man to say, I cost us, because especially in that profession, coaches don't generally like to go out and tell people, hey, I was wrong. He did that. Now, what that means, we have to find out. They have a bye week this week, and if that means he's letting other people call plays now, if that means he's just getting completely out of the way and letting every coach his position and his role, we don't know, and we might not find out. I mean, we'll have to talk to the players and coaches and try to see what exactly is changing. But good sign that he's trying to change something, or bad sign that it's just kind of an indication that he's a little bit floating and adrift and doesn't exactly know how to do this yet.
I think the jury is still out on what this week means.
Yeah.
As you said, we'll find out what it means. So I won't discredit him or credit him.
That's fair, yeah.
Until we find out what it means.
Very good. Let's talk about the team itself, because coaches or not, the players are out there making the plays or not making the plays, and the blame has to be shifted to them a little bit too for this 1-2 start that people had much bigger hopes for. Quarterback's obviously the biggest position that people talk about. Montel Cozart, he can't play again. I mean, I believe the kid wants to play hard and fix his mistakes and go to school on things and work and get better. But he's had a lot of time to do that, and I don't know that they can put him back out there.
Yeah, and the question is, when you're choosing a quarterback, who's going to be the best quarterback to lead a team that is outmanned?
Right.
And initially, I think that the Charlie Weiss thought, when looking at that issue, when John Reagan was his offensive coordinator in the final year, and Jay Keeps was the other quarterback option.
You even forget that John Reagan was the offensive coordinator.
Well, he was only it for half a season.
Yeah, if that.
But I do, and I'll do a little aside to get back to my point.
Right.
The quote that John Reagan made that sticks in my mind was when someone asked him, well, is your offense going to be up-tempo? He said, I'm not sure that doing it faster is going to make, if you're not any good, I'm not sure speeding things up is the answer.
Right.
Which was brilliant. But back to my point was Reagan and Weiss had Cozart and Heaps, and they knew they were going to get outmanned on the line.
Right.
So they thought when things break down, who's the better quarterback, Heaps or Cozart? Well, Cozart is a fast runner, so
more
you
elusive,
think
can get out of trouble and escape.
yeah,
Right.
So you think, in theory, but he's really not a good on-the-fly quarterback.
Right.
So when things are breaking down, he's not one of those guys like Todd Reesing, not that Jake Heaps was.
No, right.
So next, you got to take him out of this, and maybe even it's time to look at him at another position. But I think you give Willis Texas Tech for the entire game, no matter what happens. And if he's really bad against a bad defense,
Yeah.
then you go to Carter Stanley and give him an entire game.
Well, here's the thing: if you're not willing to go to Carter Stanley at any real time, I mean, he didn't get real time against Memphis. He didn't get real time.
No,
against
and I don't think it's a bad idea that they're giving him fake time initially.
Well, that's true, but what I'm saying is, if you're not willing to give him real time, then stop telling us how good he is, because you are saying I can't wait to see him in a game. I want to see that kid play. He's really good now. Well, you have that choice. You have that decision. You can put him in a game.
Well, he's also saying we have three really good quarterbacks,
Yeah.
so he's saying the other two are really good too.
And the reality is none of them are probably. I mean,
Well, who knows?
they all have strengths. They all have weaknesses. But as far as being a guy that you can just roll out there, if they had one, he'd be out there. And they
You would
wouldn't
think
be,
if the evaluation is being done.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And evaluation is everything in coaching.
no doubt.
You got to know your own personnel. You got to know the other personnel.
Right.
And you got to know how to scheme to make your personnel beat their personnel.
Yeah, it gets scary in a hurry. I mean, this Texas Tech offense that they'll play on Thursday night, the September 29th, is one of the best in the country, and they can light up the scoreboard in a hurry. This defense has been pretty good, but the offense is going to have to keep up a little bit for Kansas to even pretend to be in this game. After that, it's just Big 12 team after Big 12 team after Big 12 team. And if you can't compete with Ohio and you can't compete with Memphis, I don't know how you convince these guys that they can compete in the Big 12. A Big 12 that's down, too. For the first time in the history of the conference, there is not a Big 12 team ranked in the top 15 of the Associated Press poll right now. That's astonishing.
Yeah, that says it.
And Kansas, that's what Kansas needs. They need the rest of the conference to come back to them a little bit as they're on their way up. Problem is, the conference is starting to come back at least this year, but they're not ready to take advantage of that, and that's bad news.
And obviously, we've talked about this many times, the unit that is the farthest from being Big 12 ready or even FBS ready is the offensive line.
Yeah, until that's fixed, the rest of this talk, receivers, defense, quarterback, doesn't matter.
I mean, third string center, that's not ideal, but Bragg played center in high school.
Was a highly touted center.
Yeah, had a rough game. I'm not sure that he had any rougher game than Jason Rhodes. I think Jason Rhodes probably had a rougher game.
Right. Just less visible.
Yeah. So what do? Do you keep just throwing guys in there and seeing who's the best option out of bad option?
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. A lot of self-scouting this week. During the bye week, it gives them an opportunity to try to make some decisions, make some changes, and maybe that's exactly the kind of thing they're talking about.
Meanwhile, 9th rated pass defense in the nation, in the FBS. 9th rated. Now, people say, well, that's because they get behind by a lot and teams don't pass. Well, that's part of the equation.
Not exactly, though. Yeah.
But it's 4.8 yards per pass attempt.
Right.
That's a great number.
Yeah, and they're without Joe Deneen, who's not a huge factor in the pass defense, but he's the heart of the defense. That's going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. That really hurts. If it's me, I just tell him, hey, that hamstring's going to linger for the rest of the season, and we're going to get you back for 2 more years and redshirt this year.
I would do that. That's the first I've heard anyone suggest that. I absolutely would do that.
It's the best possible scenario.
Because hamstrings do linger.
They do linger, right. Ja'Cory Shepherd never got over his, and it affected him all the way into his pro day, and he made plays without a problem because he was so driven, and Joe's driven too, but he was never fully healthy.
And what are
What's
you
the
going to
use?
get? You hope that 2 years from now they'll actually be a good team.
Right.
And then you have Joe Denis.
Leadership.
And Courtney Arnick is not a bad
No,
linebacker.
yeah, that's the other thing it does. That you can get Osaz Agabor more reps and more playing time. You can get Mekhi Long some more reps out there. I mean, it's developing and saving.
He's already burned his red shirt, right?
I think so. Yeah.
That's the thing. Another thing I don't like is, why not just redshirt all the freshmen?
Right.
If you knew you're going to be 111 or 2-10 this year.
Or play them all.
These guys will. I like redshirting them more, even because in their 5th year they're going to be a lot better than they are in their 1st year.
Right. No doubt. Well, moving on from football, it is a bye week, and we'll jump back in it next week. Real quick before we get out of here, volleyball still ranked very highly in the country. They did suffer their first loss last week at Purdue, 14th ranked Purdue, which is now a top 10 team. Kansas is still ranked number 8, and I think the good news for Kansas is they've got the Big 12 conference ahead of them, and if they continue to take care of business, they'll continue to climb up the rankings. This weekend, though, they do play at Texas. Texas is Texas. They lost another one. I think they lost to Wisconsin and Nebraska, so the Big Ten kind of owns Nebraska. But Texas has kind of owned Kansas. So this is a big opportunity for KU. It'll be interesting to see how they fare down in Austin before that return match, which will be popping.
Big Ten owns
Yeah.
Texas, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd I say? Kansas?
Nebraska.
Oh, yeah. Well,
But the Big Ten does own Nebraska.
That's
now.
also
That's
true.
unfortunate. I wonder if Nebraska would have been better off staying in the Big 12. I wonder the same about Colorado.
Yeah. Bill Snyder, he said it this summer that he knows for a fact that a couple of former members of the Big 12 would like to get back
He did
in.
say that.
Bill Snyder doesn't just say things, so he knows for a fact, and I'm sure those are the two. Missouri probably doesn't care, and A&M's completely fine. They don't want back in. So, and finally, before we get out of here, basketball boot camp started. That's sort of the unofficial beginning of the season, and we were able to talk to Landon Lucas and Carlton Bragg earlier this week just about how everybody did on day one. It was really cool to talk to Lucas, especially that perspective of a 5th-year senior who's done this a bunch of times now, and his perspective of watching these young guys go through it for the first time. Azubuike, Jackson, Lightfoot, Malik Newman, Evan Maxwell, all these guys that are doing it for the first time. It was cool. I mean, Lucas even said it was funny to watch that different perspective. But he said everybody did great. They need to tighten some things up as expected. But day one, everyone survived, and that's the name of the game with that thing.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to get a perspective from Landon Lucas because you're
Right.
talking about a 5th-year senior who, when he was a redshirt fresh out of high school, had a maturity level more befitting of a 5th-year senior.
Right.
So
Right.
he's really like a 10th-year senior maturity-wise.
A lot like you.
10th-year senior? No, that
Just
would make
really
me
mature.
32. No, I don't have the maturity of a 32-year-old.
Fair enough.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Hope to get there.
Well, obviously, late night is right around the corner. KU football will play September 29th at Texas Tech, nationally televised game. Could be good or bad. We'll see how that goes. I know Texas Tech's excited about that opportunity to show the country how good their offense is. Maybe the Kansas defense will be up for it. And then just a couple days after that, there will be no football game, but there will be a basketball event. Late night is on a Saturday, and we'll have all kinds of information and more previewing that next week right here on KU Sports Extra. So as I mentioned at the top, busy time for KU Athletics, and 3 very interesting programs right there. That's to say nothing about the rest of them. For Tom Keegan, I'm Matt Tait. Thanks for checking out KU Sports Extra, and we will talk to you guys again next week.